we might get kicked out of Buffalo Trace.
Should you buy someone alcohol, even though they're going to pay you back, who are of age? Should you buy them something when it says limited to one person?
I mean, he's from all the way in Michigan. He's a long ways from home. We're doing it.
Should you get in trouble for it? That's the question.
No. Welcome to Frankfort, Kentucky. We are going to do a bourbon tour because
Yum.
You got to do it when you're in Kentucky, and we're just outside of Frankfort, about 5 miles from this place, so we got in on a wait list. We're taking a tour.
Yay, Buffalo Trace.
I don't even drink bourbon. I'm going to do the tasting. It's what you got to do when you come to Kentucky, at least do one tour. And Buffalo Trace was sold out, but I got on a waiting list and we got right in. In the early days, I smell it already. Can you smell it?
Yes.
I mean, not bourbon, but whatever.
We need Justin. Justin could tell us what we're smelling and how to enjoy the smell.
I hope after they teach us how to sip and breathe and all that, maybe I'll have a taste for it. It's strong. I can't drink it.
Yeah, you have to savor the first. You hold it in your mouth, hold the tongue, right?
I don't know, and then don't you?
No. No, I think you just hold on your tongue. I think what it really does is it numbs your tongue, and after that, you're all good.
It probably does numb your tongue, and
hey,
if you have too many.
There's a RVer over there, got a little Jeep towing. Maybe we can get Winston in here.
Per person. You can only get one of these in a 90-day period.
What is it? Small batch.
Small batch, bottled, Colonel E.H. Taylor.
We love sharing our history with you guys as well as our bourbon. To get us started with our name, Buffalo Trace Distillery, do you guys know why we're named Buffalo Trace? It has to do with buffalo. So buffalo would follow along this area. They'd follow the Kentucky River. The Kentucky River is just on the back side of the distillery. And they would follow it for two reasons. For one, it was a great source of water for them. But two, it was also shallow enough along the bend so that they could pass through it. And they're great big animals, so they're going to travel around together. They're going to pack around in herds. And they're going to leave trails behind. Trails are also known as traces. And those traces would be used by early explorers to guide their way. Two of which were two brothers, Willis and Hancock Lee. They were sent out from Virginia. This was before Kentucky was a Commonwealth. So they came out here, they surveyed the land, they reported back to Virginia. They loved it so much here, though, that they came back here, they settled at Leestown. And in 1786, we had our first distillation on site, making us America's oldest continuously operating distillery. So congratulations, you guys are standing in America's oldest continuously operating distillery. Yeah. So there you go. Now, I have a quick 250-year history lesson that I get to give to you guys before we start walking around. Woo! Right? We're going to jump ahead a little bit in time. We're going to start in 1869. 1869, we had our first big name in our bourbon history come along. His name was Colonel E.H. Taylor. He was a Kentucky colonel. He came onto the site here and he purchased the distillery for $6,000 from a man named Daniel Swigert. And then he turned around, invested $70,000 into the property to expand on it, which is an estimated $1.5 million in today's dollars. Part of this expansion included copper fermenters, which hadn't been used in the industry before. He did this because he had spent a year abroad in Europe, and he noticed that they were using copper piping to distill out there. Copper pipes, they were making good quality whiskey, so he thought, okay, well, if a little bit of copper does a good job, a lot of copper should do a great job. So he expanded, Brought on those copper fermenters, ended up renaming the distillery from Leestown Distillery to OFC, which stands for Old Fire Copper. He also brought on new warehouses, a new column still. He was a big name in the industry altogether. He was known as the founding father of modern bourbon. He also was a politician for some time. He was mayor of Frankfort for 16 years. He was state senator for a while too. And part of all these ties that he had also brought along the Bottled and Bond Act. Are you guys familiar with the Bottled and Bond Act? So Bottled and Bond was essentially the first consumer protection act, leading to what we have today as FDA regulations. So during Taylor's time, there were people called rectifiers. So these rectifiers, they would take different barrels from different distilleries, they'd mix them together to create their own tasting profiles, but from time to time, they would put stuff in it that shouldn't be in it, like chewed up tobacco spit, make it look darker, even shoe polish, even sulfuric acid to replicate that alcohol burn. So he went out to Washington, D.C., told them what was going on. They came up with the Bottled and Bond Act, which said, for one, you had to age your bourbon in a federally bonded warehouse for no less than 4 years. It had to be bottled at 100 proof. It could have no additives to it outside of water. And it had to be distilled by the same distiller at the same distillery within the same distilling season. So again, that leads us to today where we have FDA regulations. Who knew that came from bourbon? Pretty cool, right? E.H. Taylor, he expanded onto the property. After his big expansion here on property, though, he ran into some financial issues, which brings us to our next big name in our bourbon history. His name was George T. Stagg. Now, George T. Stagg, he was another colonel, but he actually served in the military. He actually rose to the rank of captain in the Union Army. But after his time serving, he was out in St. Louis, Missouri, and he was a whiskey wholesaler, and he was selling barrels of OFC. So he already had this connection with Taylor. He knew that Taylor had fallen onto some hard times, and he took that as an opportunity to buy into the company. He bought out Taylor's debt. He then became president of the distillery, and E.H. Taylor then became vice president of the distillery. And the two worked together for some time, but they didn't quite see eye to eye. E.H. Taylor, he was a man of quality bourbon, and he did not care what he had to spend to get that quality bourbon. George T. Stagg, on the other hand, he was a businessman. He knew he needed to make a profit. He also wanted a good quality product. More than anything, he knew he needed to make a profit. So the two had differing ideas of where they wanted to take the company. They ended up splitting ways. Taylor, he moved on to a different distillery down the road out in Millville, Kentucky, and he called it the Old Taylor and Sons Distillery. It is now known today, though, as Castle and Key. And George T. Stagg, he stayed on property here, kept us open, kept us going, and eventually in 1904 the distillery was renamed the George T. Stagg Distillery. We're going to jump back to 1897. 1897, the same year that the Bottled and Bond Act is passed, our next big name comes along to the property. He was 16 years old. His name was Albert Bacon Blanton. And with the middle name Bacon, you know you're destined to do some pretty great things, right? Right. So he works his way up the company ladder until 1921 he becomes president of the distillery. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I would not want to become president of a distillery in the 1920s because of this small little bump in the road called the Prohibition. The Prohibition lasted 13 years, but Blanton, he was a smart guy. He partnered up with a company out of New York called the Schley Company. The Schley Company got us a permit to make medicinal whiskey because, you see, the 18th Amendment never said anything about drinking. It only said that you could make it, sell it, or transport it. But you could make it legally for medicinal purposes, so you could go to your doctor, your dentist, or even your veterinarian to receive a prescription. 1 pint, 100 proof whiskey every 10 days. So you know whatever you have back then, for one, it's contagious. So you have it, your spouse has it, and all 7 of your kids have it, right? And your dog. But 2, it's going to be chronic. You guys are going to be sick for a really long time. Like 13 years to be exact. And that would get you through the Prohibition. And for a state that had roughly 2 million people in it during that time, there were 6 million prescriptions written in the state of Kentucky alone. Now, Blanton and the Schley Company, they end up taking us under a large expansion here on property. They take us from a 14-building distillery to a 114-building distillery. So a lot of what you see on site today has to do with their contribution. Now, after this big expansion, our next big hurdle in the bourbon industry altogether that we saw was the 70s, 80s, and 90s. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, no one was really drinking bourbon. They had switched over to the clear spirits, to the rum, to the vodka, to beer. You know, it wasn't really seen as the popular drink amongst the younger crowd. So, bourbon industry altogether saw a big slowdown. We actually got down to 50 employees here at one point in time, and one of those 50 employees is our next big name in our bourbon history. His name was Elmer T. Lee. Elmer T. Lee was our first master distiller here on property, and he worked under Blanton. And he noticed Blanton, who had his house built here on property, up on the hill. But he would have friends and family come out every Sunday evening. He would tell the warehouse manager to bring out the best barrel of bourbon. They'd bottle it up, and they'd hand those bottles out to his guests. And Elmer T. Lee, he was inspired by that, and he created the first ever single barrel bourbon to be released on the market. It came out in 1984, and he called it Blanton's. And when that bottle came out, that is what got us through the 80s and 90s, because although people weren't really drinking it here, there were other countries very interested in that bourbon. Now, in 1992, our parent company, Sazerac, comes around. It's a family company out of New Orleans. They purchased us. 1999, they rebranded us Buffalo Trace Distillery, after those buffalo that led the way all those years ago. Then, early 2000s comes around, and all of a sudden, everybody's drinking bourbon again. Big bourbon boom comes along. We're not prepared for it. So our parent company, Sazerac, they say, okay, well, what do you guys need to make more bourbon? So we write out a little grocery list of sorts, hand it off to them. And they basically laugh in our face and say, no, we're talking a lot more than that. A lot more than that. So here's $1.2 billion. Do whatever you have to do to get it done. Now, back behind the visitor center, we had 12 previous fermenters, again from Blanton's time here on property, that hold 92,000 gallons in them. We added on 12 more back in 2019 that hold 93,000 gallons in them. So altogether we have 24 fermenters that hold over 90,000 gallons in them. And then up the road we have what we call our whiskey farm. Our whiskey farm, it's about 280 plus acres. They currently have 18 warehouses built. They're building onto a 19th one right now. When it is all said and done, we will be doubling production all around. You can double production all you want with bourbon, but bourbon takes time. Depending on what you drink, you're going to have to wait 4 to 23 years for that bourbon to be done, right? You can't speed up Father Time. So, we ask two things of you guys. One, be patient with us. We are trying our best to keep up with your all's drinking habits. Okay? You guys drink a lot, though. It's okay. I do too. But two, keep doing what you're doing. Keep coming out, keep drinking, keep buying alcohol, because again, we're already $1.2 billion in. We got to pay for it somehow, right? But if you take a look this way, you replace this road with a dirt road. This is exactly what E.H. Taylor would see during his day in the late 1800s. So 2 different centuries at work here. And speaking of Taylor, take a look at this warehouse here behind me. Look up at the very top, you'll see at the crest it says OFC. You guys remember what that stands for? Old Fire Software, exactly right.
Are you excited?
All I smell is something. Are they drinking up there?
He's passing barrels up.
Getting a drink? So again, this is the branding shed. Like it says in its name, this is where we brand our barrels. Except for the fact we don't actually fire brand our barrels anymore, because somebody really smart figured out that alcohol and fire don't really mix well together. So now we use ink on our barrels. They'll put the Buffalo Trace logo on there. They'll put the mash bill on there, the date that it was filled, and it'll be good here. The barrels, they come in, they're already put together. They're charred on the inside, ready to go. We get 12 to 1,500 barrels a day to be filled. These barrels back here, they're good to go. They're going to be pushed on out to that green door. That green door leads back to the cistern room. And that's where the barrels get filled with 53 gallons of White Dog. Again, White Dog is moonshine, distillate, unaged whiskey, whatever you want to call it. Now, after that, you fill it up, stick it in a warehouse, and let it age for 4 to 23 years. We're going to be talking about bourbon today. Surprise, surprise. But you may have heard the term that not all whiskey is bourbon, but all bourbon is whiskey, right? That's because it's a subset. There are specific rules you have to follow for it to be considered bourbon. And one of the rules is the container that you age it in. So for one, that container that you use, it has to be new. So once you use a barrel to make bourbon, you cannot use it to make bourbon again.
It's a National Historic.
I know. It's one of the few, actually.
So this right here, this is the cistern room. So there's a kind of a tunnel system running back behind the branding shed. That's where those barrels come in. Once those barrels are all good to go, and there's an automated system at the end of this building that fills that barrel up to that 53 gallons. And the first worker is going to hammer in the poplar bung. Now the poplar bung is made out of a different type of wood. It's not oak wood, it's poplar wood. So once they have that in, they're going to roll it down this way, the next worker right here. They're going to push that barrel up onto a really quick
bourbon.
We shall see.
Sure smells strong already.
Yes.
Alrighty guys, so this is Warehouse I. Now this warehouse holds about 47,000 barrels inside of it. It was built in 1936. There are 6 floors above our heads. Don't think about it too much.
I know.
No, I'm kidding. We're all good. Now, this is we're going to get into some of the other rules of bourbon real quick before I get ahead of myself. So we talked about one of the rules already. We talked about that new oak charred container that you have to use to age your bourbon. You can have no additives outside of water to your bourbon. As soon as you add any flavoring to it, it becomes a whiskey. For mash bill, the recipe, you have to have 51% corn in your mash bill. 51% corn. It comes off the column still, you know, those big towered buildings I talked about at the beginning of the tour. When it comes off that still, it can be no higher than 160 proof. When it goes into the barrel, it can be no higher than 125 proof. And then when it goes into a bottle, it can be no lower than 80 proof. And then last rule, very important rule, bourbon has to be made in the United States. Back in 1964, Congress declared it America's national spirit. So it has to be made in the U.S., but no, it does not have to be made in Kentucky. However, we do make 95% of all bourbon. 100% of the good bourbon, to be clear. Right? Right. But no, it does not have to be made in Kentucky. You're going to notice it's a small building here in Frankfort, Kentucky, and a lot of people wonder why. Why is this world-known bourbon made in this small building in Frankfort, Kentucky? And that is because we have a motto here, and that is to honor tradition, embrace change. This is how Elmer T. Lee and Blanton wanted it done, so this is how we still continue to do it today.
Oh wow, look at him go.
Write down what warehouse it came from, warehouse H, the proof, the registered bottle number, what rate number it came off of, and the barrel. All that information is still here. Hand off to the next person, they're doing the packaging. The last person down here is putting them into the shipping containers. Good, great. Alright, let's head on down this way. Good work.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. Good job. It's so pretty. Hey, do you drink it or no? No. I don't either yet. I'm gonna try that. Yeah, I'm gonna try. I don't know. I love that though. The labels you guys are doing straight on. Since Prohibition. That's awesome. Let's go. Wowie.
Wheatley, so good you can drink it neatly. You didn't get that on video, did you? Me saying it?
I did.
We did.
We're drinking it neatly.
Drinking it neatly. Have you guys seen that the new
It is fine.
advertisement for it? No.
You're the first.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. You'll have to look it up because it has a whole it's an actually just started. Now we're gonna head into some bourbon. Now you're gonna take that first sip. You're gonna give it the nice Kentucky chew. If you don't know what the Kentucky chew is, you literally chew it. You just swish it around your mouth. You're gonna let it run over your palate, down on your gums. Take your time with it so that on that second sip, your palate's acclimated to wait. You can take in more tasting profiles. Okay? Go ahead and pick up your Buffalo Trace and give it a try.
Chew it.
Enjoy. Again.
Holy cow.
90 proof, 7 to 9 years. That is our master number 1.
The first one. What is this?
Sorry, not a bourbon drinker here. Two of my favorite things are caramel and butterscotch, and I bet this ain't gonna taste like caramel.
Your mouth's probably getting a little,
Personally,
Smoother.
a small batch
But still
is my
crisp.
favorite.
Ugh.
Alright. So, bottled and bond as well, it is distilled within the same distilling season. So distilling season
It is smoother, though.
January to June, and then July to December. So that's also going to contribute some difference to it as well. But do you guys agree? Cheers. His wheated bourbon, and
Can't
his
tell
name was William
if I'm
Lower
getting
and he was the one, his company. And for dessert, we have bourbon cream and root beer. Now you can either drink these separately or you can drink half of each and then mix them together.
That sounds
to
perfect.
make an adult root beer float.
Now we're
And then
talking.
we also have a bourbon ball to top it off with. By Rebecca Bruce Candy Store. They were actually the ones to invent the bourbon ball in the 1930s as a celebratory treat after Prohibition.
It's pretty good.
Yum.
All right.
What is the proof on bourbon cream?
The bourbon cream is 30 proof.
Oh, that's why it's
Yeah,
okay for me.
that's
Yeah, that's why I can drink
There's
it.
no alcohol in the root beer,
Yeah,
but it is caffeine free.
so good.
Made with real natural sugar cane and real Madagascar vanilla. You have an empty plate in front of you
I
now.
want to try root beer with
Congratulations, you're part of the
Weller.
Empty Plate Club, just like me. If you don't mind stacking those cups up for our bar team, that would help me tremendously.
No.
If you want to take those cups and add pads on it, the last thing, okay, so we'll take you right back to the gift shop. We're just like Disney, eating with the gift shop, right? Yes. The barrel proof is by far my.
Ooh, root beer with W.L. Weller. Wow. I'm not convinced.
I got chocolate in my mouth now.
Vodka. None goes to waste.
That was a little
Oh,
stung.
do them all. Boom, boom, boom. We have to give it.
That was hot. Believe that. I don't know that I like mine hot like
Okay.
that,
Yeah.
even though it's neat and everybody says do that. I think I like mine with a cube of ice and let it be chilled. And I think that just takes a little of the sting out of it for me, and I enjoy the taste a lot better.
And for me, give me the root beer and the cream.
That root beer and cream was super smooth.
I'll take the adult root beer float. That's me.
It was
and the
really
vodka.
smooth. It was good.
I'm gonna get some vodka with the Bloody Mary. Great tour.
Great
For free.
tour. Free, and it was over an hour.
You get to taste them all, and then, just like Disneyland, come to the gift shop and buy. All the things. Freddie said to keep making memories, so
Making memories.
that's exactly what we're doing. And I'm still not a bourbon fan, but
Hey, but a fantastic tour.
great tour, great tour.
Fantastic tour.
Thank you for visiting.
Yes.
Good times, great tour.
Really nice.
Even if you don't drink bourbon, it's good tour, the history,
Yep.
the process. I mean, listen, if you come to Kentucky, why would you not do at least one tour?
Yeah, at least one tour.